I watched my sister's graduation party through a screen. Balloons, glitter, our parents dancing like it was New Year's Eve. Just 3 months ago, I graduated too. No party, no flowers, not even a family dinner. College wasn't that hard, my mom said. Maybe I wasn't worth celebrating. Maybe I never was. But what if I told you this story isn't about jealousy? It's about waking up one day and realizing your family never saw you at all. And the silent war you wage. Not to be seen by them, but to finally see yourself. Would you still stay silent? The screen glowed in the dim light of my bedroom. Streamers in gold and blush fluttered behind my sister as she held a champagne glass high, laughing into the camera. "Congrats, Ella!" blazed in neon lights above her head. My parents stood proudly beside her, beaming. I couldn't hear the music, but I could feel the celebration humming through every pixel. 100 guests clapped, toasted, danced. And me? I sat cross-legged in my pajamas, watching the whole thing from an Instagram live I wasn't invited to. A comment floated up the screen. "Where's Sierra? She must be busy, right?" Busy? Sure. Busy being the daughter who didn't matter. 3 months ago, I graduated too. Same university, same degree level. But there was no party, no streamers, no glowing sign. Just a $4 grocery store cake and my mom's casual remark. College wasn't that hard anyway. I thought I didn't mind. I told myself I preferred things low-key. I even smiled through it. But watching Ella's celebration now, my throat tightened like it had something sharp lodged inside. It wasn't just the party. It was every moment like this. Every time Ella was recognized for something. Honor roll, volleyball, her infectious energy. I was there, clapping. Not once did anyone ask how I was doing. My wins were expected. Background noise. Hers? They were fireworks. I tapped through her stories, stopping on a photo. My family, gathered close, champagne flutes raised. My dad's hand on Ella's shoulder, my mom's eyes shining with pride. My name wasn't tagged. I wasn't in the picture. I wasn't even mentioned. Maybe I'm just easy to forget. I closed the app and leaned back, pressing a palm to my chest like I was trying to hold something in. Grief? Anger? I wasn't sure. Just a hollow pulse that kept echoing. What did I do wrong? That night, instead of sleeping, I opened my childhood photo folder, the one I hadn't touched in years. At first, it was nostalgic. Me in overalls, Ella grinning with missing front teeth. But as I scrolled, I noticed something. In almost every video, every group picture, I was barely there, cropped at the edges, eyes turned elsewhere. It wasn't just a feeling. It was right in front of me. In one video, Ella blew out birthday candles as the whole room sang. I was beside her, clapping. I leaned in toward the cake, maybe trying to say something. But the camera shifted, and I was gone, cut out. I reached for a dusty box under my bed. Inside was a worn book, The Little Prince. My aunt had given it to me on my 8th birthday. I flipped to the front page. There it was, in her handwriting. To my little thinker. Keep asking why. The tears came quietly, not the dramatic movie-style sobs. Just slow, steady drops like something melting inside. I called my aunt the next day. She didn't act surprised. "You've always been the observer," she said gently. Not loud, but deep. Your mom never knew what to do with that. She never really saw me, did she? I asked. There was a long pause. Then, she saw your grandmother in you, and they never healed. I blinked. What? Your mom and your grandma. They were oil and water. But your grandma loved you fiercely. That scared your mom more than you'll ever know. She offered to send me something, A letter my mom wrote to my grandmother years ago. I said yes, and hours later it arrived as a scanned copy in my email. I opened the file, half dreading what I'd find. "I just want a daughter who makes me proud," my mom had written. Not a cold, distant echo of the woman who never understood me. It was like a window into a storm I didn't start but had been caught in my whole life. I closed the laptop and picked up the little prints again, tracing the ink of her message with my fingertip. To my little thinker. I wasn't cold. I wasn't distant. I was just different, and maybe, for once, that didn't have to mean unworthy. I threw myself into everything. Honors courses, leadership roles, volunteering, late-night study sessions. I didn't do it because I loved the rush. I did it because I thought maybe, just maybe, effort could be louder than silence. Maybe if I stacked enough achievements in front of them, they'd finally look up and say, "We are proud of you too." At night, when the house was quiet, I started recording my thoughts. At first, just voice notes, then full audio clips. I called it The Invisible Thread, a podcast for anyone who has ever felt like background noise in their own family. I didn't say my name. I never mentioned specific people, just stories, feelings, moments. "Sometimes being ignored hurts more than being yelled at," I said in the first episode. "Because at least yelling means you're being noticed." I uploaded it under a pseudonym, linking it to a separate Gmail. But I forgot one thing. The contact email for the podcast platform still had my university address tied to it. Rookie mistake. I didn't notice it until episode 4 went viral. Over 50,000 plays in under a day. And then came the message. A direct one. Short. Honest. From a stranger. I thought I was the only one. Thank you for saying what I couldn't. I stared at it for minutes, unable to move. Then another message came in. Then 20 more. The next day, walking home from campus, I crossed the overpass above the freeway, the wind biting at my face. The sound of cars roared below, but I didn't hear them. All I heard was the echo of that message. I stopped in the middle of the bridge and leaned against the railing. Not to jump, just to breathe. It was the first time in years I let myself cry without apologizing for it. Not quiet tears, not the polite kind, just full-body grief. For the girl who clapped alone. For the young woman still chasing something she might never catch. When I got home, my mom was waiting. She held her phone like it was a weapon. "What is this?" she snapped, showing me a screenshot of my podcast, my voice, my story. "You're making us look like monsters to strangers online," she said. "I never said your names." "You didn't have to," she hissed. "People know. They'll figure it out." And just like that, it wasn't about how I felt. It was about how they looked. "I just wanted to tell the truth," I whispered. Her face hardened. "That's not your truth to tell." We didn't speak the rest of the night. The next morning, Ella sent me a voice message. I didn't expect it. We hadn't spoken much since the party. Her voice was soft, like she was afraid to be heard. "I know you're hurt," she said. "But Mom, she's been hurting too. She just never learned how to love someone who doesn't smile all the time." There was silence, then one last line. "I'm sorry you felt alone. I wish I'd seen it sooner." I didn't reply. I didn't know how. That night, my dad knocked on my door. He didn't say anything at first, just held out a small brass key. "What's this?" He pointed to the hallway closet. Bottom drawer, back wall. I went there after he left, moved aside blankets, shoes, old Christmas lights. There was a small safe, barely bigger than a shoebox. I used the key, heart pounding like I was unlocking something sacred. Inside was a sealed envelope, yellowed with time. My name on the front, in my grandmother's handwriting. I sat on the floor, hands shaking, and opened it. "My dearest Sierra," it began. "If you're reading this, it means the world has not been kind. And I'm sorry, not because I failed you, but because I know what it's like to be unseen. You were always the spark in the corner, quiet, thoughtful, watching everything. Some people mistake that for coldness, but I know it's warmth held close, waiting for the right time to shine." I closed my eyes. "If you ever feel out of place," she wrote, "don't doubt your light. It's not your fault they can't see. Some families aren't blind. They're just not ready to face the brightness." I clutched the letter to my chest, and for the first time, I didn't feel invisible. For the first time in years, I stopped running. I stopped trying to outrun the silence, the absence, the ache. I stopped working myself into exhaustion just to earn a glance, a nod, "We're proud of you." It was like standing still in the middle of a storm and realizing I didn't have to fight it anymore. I could just let it pass. I started writing, not just for the podcast, but for myself. Pages poured out of me, fragments of memories stitched together with truth. I didn't think it mattered. I didn't think anyone would care. But then an email landed in my inbox. Subject line: "Interested in your story." A small publishing house had come across my blog. They said my voice was raw, honest, needed. They wanted to turn it into a book. At first, I thought it was a scam. I almost deleted it. But something told me to respond. 2 weeks later, I sat in a modest office downtown, contract on the table. The editor smiled as she handed me a pen. "You ready?" she asked. I nodded, but my hand trembled. And then, just as I was about to sign, someone walked through the door. A familiar figure, older now, but unmistakable. It was Miss Howard, my 8th grade English teacher. The one who once told me, "You're bright, Sierra, but if you want to survive this world, you need to learn how to blend in." She smiled as she approached. "I heard you were the author. I had to see it with my own eyes." I froze. All those years of trying to fit her mold flashed back. My awkward silences in class. The papers she marked with, "Good work, but too heavy." I expected judgment, but instead she extended the book, mock-up. "Will you sign it for me?" I signed, and as I handed it back, she whispered, "I was wrong." I didn't know what to say. Later that evening, I lay back on my old couch, the city lights flickering outside the window. I opened my voice notes and recorded something. Not for the podcast, just for me. I don't need to win. I just need to exist, fully, honestly, without shrinking. I breathed deep and slow. The advance from the book wasn't much, but it was enough to rent a tiny space near campus. A one-room studio with exposed brick and a broken heater. I painted the walls soft blue, laid down a rug, brought in a kettle and a stack of used chairs. I called it Writing to Heal. Every Saturday, I hosted a free workshop for young women who wanted to write but didn't know how, or didn't think they could. Some had stories like mine, others didn't. It didn't matter. We created a space where truth was currency and silence didn't win. I read every submission carefully, encouraged honesty, protected boundaries, and then one piece arrived that stopped me cold. It was unsigned, submitted through the anonymous bin we kept near the door. The writing was raw, hesitant. It spoke of a sister, a golden child, and another, forgotten, resented. "I hated my sister," it read. "Not because she did anything wrong, but because she reminded me of all the things I didn't want to face. The way Mom looked at her, the way I stayed quiet, the guilt of being chosen." I read it 3 times before I realized who had written it. Ella. She was in my class, somewhere in the circle, maybe across from me, maybe right beside me. I hadn't recognized her in the room, not without her usual brightness, her high ponytail, her signature laugh. In this space, she was just another voice, searching for healing. I didn't say anything. The next Saturday, she came again. She didn't speak much, just listened, wrote. And then, during our end-of-session free write, she slid another paper into the bin. This time it said, "I used to believe being loved meant being better, but now I see love isn't supposed to compete. It's supposed to coexist." I stayed late that night, cleaning up chairs, wiping the whiteboard. Ella lingered by the door. "I liked what you read today," she said softly, not looking at me. I nodded. "Thanks." She hesitated, then added, "Some people aren't blind. They're just scared to look." I wanted to hug her, or cry, or ask why now, but I didn't. Instead, I said, "I'm glad you came." She smiled barely. "I didn't think you would be." When she left, I sat in the silence of the studio, heart pounding with something new. Not pain, not pride, just a quiet sense of beginning. The invitation arrived in a gold-trimmed envelope with scripted lettering. "You are cordially invited to the wedding of Emma and Louise, my second cousin." We weren't close, but weddings in my family were never just about the couple. They were reunions, obligations, tests. I hadn't seen most of them since the book came out. Some hadn't spoken to me since I moved out. Others had left vague comments online, half supportive, half disapproving. But I knew one thing. My parents would be there. I almost didn't go. I thought about tossing the invitation, feigning a scheduling conflict. But something tugged at me. Not revenge, not pride, just curiosity. A quiet, dangerous desire to see what silence would feel like now that I'd learned how to speak. The venue was a garden hall, draped in white linen and soft fairy lights. Laughter floated through the air, clinking glasses and violin melodies trailing behind. I walked in alone, wearing a dark green dress that hugged me just enough. No armor, no apology. My mother spotted me first. She smiled, that carefully constructed social smile she'd worn all my life, the one that said, "Let's pretend." She walked over, arms wide, voice high-pitched. "Sierra, you look lovely." "Thanks," I said flatly. She leaned in for a hug, but I stepped back slightly. It wasn't dramatic, just enough to mark a boundary. We exchanged pleasantries. She asked about the studio. I gave her the headline version. She nodded like a woman checking boxes on a clipboard. My father watched from across the room. He didn't come over. Just sipped his drink and looked away when I caught his gaze. Throughout the evening, I felt like a prop, a curiosity. People whispered. Some avoided eye contact altogether. A few smiled at me with genuine warmth, but most, they looked at me the way people look at a lightning rod, interesting from a distance, but never too close. During the reception, while everyone danced, my mother approached again. This time, her smile was thinner. She tugged my arm gently and led me toward a quieter corner behind the dessert table. "I need to ask you something," she said, eyes scanning the room. "Go ahead." Her voice dropped. "Did you write that book just to get famous?" The question hit like ice water. I blinked. "Excuse me?" "You exposed our family. You twisted everything to make us look like villains. Do you have any idea what that did to your father's reputation? To mine?" I laughed once, dry and bitter. "It wasn't about you. It was never about you. But people know who we are." I met her eyes. "They do now, and that scares you." She didn't reply, just stood there, mouth slightly open. Before I could walk away, I heard another voice. My father. Calm. Low. She told the truth, he said, stepping beside us. And she did what I never had the courage to do. My mother turned sharply. What are you talking about? He looked at me. I saw it too, you know. The way we treated you. I couldn't bring myself to face it. I stared at him. For the first time, he looked smaller than I remembered. Without another word, I turned and walked away. Back inside the hall, the lights danced across the tables. Laughter resumed. Glasses clinked. I found an empty table near the back, wiped away some condensation on the glass surface, and traced a sentence with my fingertip. Family is where you feel safe. If not, build your own. No one noticed, but it felt like the loudest thing I'd ever written. The next morning, I left the family group chat. No dramatic exit, just silence. 2 hours later, Ella sent me a single emoji in a private message. A small green sprout. It said everything. Days passed, then a week. I didn't expect what happened next. Someone tagged me in a post from a social justice fan page. A photo of me at my book signing, hand raised mid-sentence, eyes focused. The caption read, Young voices who refuse to stay silent. Meet Sierra Hayes, author, advocate, truth-teller. My heart raced. The post had hundreds of shares. Comments flooded in, mostly strangers thanking me. Some told their own stories. Some just said, finally. It felt unreal. Like the life I had always chased was now running toward me. A week later, I had a scheduled talk at a university. Small auditorium, about 60 people. I'd done these before, but this one felt heavier. Maybe because it was my hometown. Maybe because I knew someone might show up. The talk went smoothly. I shared my journey, my reflections, my mistakes. I didn't sugarcoat. I didn't dramatize. Just truth, plain and sharp. As the crowd applauded, I scanned the room. That's when I saw her, in the very back row, alone, wearing sunglasses and a wide hat, but unmistakably my mother. I froze for a second. She wasn't clapping, just watching. No one else seemed to notice. I didn't acknowledge her. I didn't call her out. I didn't run either. I simply stood there, letting her see what she couldn't, or wouldn't, for most of my life. After the session, as people approached to talk, she slipped out quietly. We didn't speak, but in those 5 seconds when our eyes met, something shifted. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just recognition. And somehow, that was enough to shake everything. The applause had barely faded when I walked off the stage and into the quiet hallway behind the auditorium. I leaned against the wall and let out a long, shaky breath. My mother's face was still vivid in my mind. Not angry, not cold, just watching. A look I'd never seen from her before. Something between regret and awe. But I didn't want to analyze it, not yet. I thought healing would feel like fireworks, like suddenly everything would make sense. But it was quieter than I expected, softer. More like learning how to breathe again. I spent the next few weeks turning down interviews, stepping away from the spotlight. I needed space, and not the performative kind. Real, honest solitude. I stopped posting, stopped answering every email. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone. Then, one morning, I received an invitation. It was from Ted. They wanted me to give a talk, a big one, on a red circle in front of thousands. I said yes. I booked the flight, chose the outfit, practiced my lines. And then, the night before the event, I canceled everything. Not out of fear, but clarity. I wasn't ready. Not because my story wasn't powerful, but because I hadn't finished telling it to the most important person, me, So I scheduled something else instead. Therapy. Not the casual once-a-month sessions I'd done in college. This time it was intensive, deep, intentional. I needed to peel back the layers I had built up while surviving. The therapist's office smelled like jasmine and old books. She wore linen and had silver-streaked hair, her voice warm but firm. Her name was Joan. On our second session, as I shared pieces of my grandmother, Joan smiled gently. "You know," she said, "your grandmother was my college roommate." I blinked. "Wait, what?" "She talked about you often, said you had her eyes, her stubbornness, her gentleness." The air shifted. My chest tightened. "She used to say," Joan continued, "my granddaughter will change the world, but first, the world will try to convince her she's invisible." I didn't say anything. Just sat there, stunned, holding back tears. Later, in a quieter moment, Joan asked, "If the 8-year-old version of you walked into this room right now, what would you say to her?" I didn't answer right away. My throat burned. But finally, through tears, I whispered, "I'm sorry I didn't protect you sooner." The silence afterward wasn't heavy. It was sacred. From that day forward, I began to live differently. Not louder, not bolder, but more truthfully. With the earnings from my book and speaking events, I created something I wished I'd had growing up. A scholarship fund called the May Project, named after my grandmother. It offered grants and mentorship to students who had faced emotional neglect or family dysfunction. Not just financial help, but community, safety, a sense of being seen. Applications poured in. One night, while reviewing submissions, I found a message in the inbox from an anonymous sender. The subject line read, "For consideration." The document was a short essay, honest, hesitant, and deeply personal. It told the story of a girl raised to shine so brightly, she never stopped to question who was left in the dark. "I used to think love was a competition," the writer confessed, "that my worth depended on being the favorite. But I'm learning now that real love doesn't need winners." I knew that voice, even veiled behind a pseudonym. It was Ella. At the bottom she had typed, "If possible, I'd like this to appear as a companion piece in your next book, only if you think it fits." I didn't reply right away. I didn't need to, but I knew what I had to do. A month later, the proofs for my second book came back from the publisher. There, on the cover, written by Sierra Hayes' an anonymous sister. It felt right. Weeks passed. Life moved forward. One Saturday afternoon, Ella showed up at my studio without texting first. She brought lemon tarts from the bakery near our old house. We sat on the studio floor, the sun filtering through the windows, and ate in comfortable silence. After a while, she said, "Remember how Mom always bought just one slice of lemon tart? Said it was too expensive for two?" I nodded. "You always let me have the bigger half." She smiled. "Yeah, but I always wanted the crust. You never ate the crust." We laughed. It wasn't loud, but it was real. We didn't talk about the book, or the past, or Mom. We just shared something simple, uncomplicated. For the first time in years, we weren't sisters defined by comparison. We were just two women trying to be whole. And that, somehow, was everything. Things didn't magically fix themselves. There were no grand apologies, no orchestrated family dinners with teary speeches. But something softer took root. Space. Breathing room. A silent agreement to try, even if clumsily. We stopped pretending. My mother and I spoke occasionally. Not often, but enough. Messages instead of calls. Carefully chosen words instead of avoidance. Sometimes awkward, sometimes strained, but honest. One morning, while scrolling through my inbox, I saw her name. It wasn't a long message, just 10 words. Next time, I want to buy 2 slices of cake. I stared at the screen for a long time, not because of what it meant, but because of what it didn't try to erase. She didn't pretend the past hadn't happened. She didn't beg for redemption. She simply reached out in her own way, saying, "I see you now." That small gesture cracked something open. Not forgiveness, not closure, but an invitation. One I could choose to accept. Or not. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I packed my notes and flew to D.C. I'd been asked to consult for a new national initiative on family therapy and emotional literacy in schools. The invitation surprised me. How far this story had traveled. How many hearts it had touched. The panel room was bright and sterile, filled with professionals in blazers and glasses. I didn't feel out of place, but I did feel reflective, as if my presence there said more than my resume ever could. During a break, I walked down the hallway, needing air more than coffee. Near the vending machines, I spotted a little girl, maybe 7, maybe 8, curled on a bench, red-eyed and holding her backpack like a shield. "Hey," I said gently, kneeling beside her. "Want to talk?" She looked up slowly. Her eyes were a mirror, wide, uncertain, quietly hopeful. "No one came to get me," she whispered. I nodded, not asking for details. "Sometimes people don't show up," I said. "But that doesn't mean you're not worth the wait." She didn't respond, but she leaned slightly closer. That was enough. Later, I found a staff member and made sure she got home safely. But that moment stayed with me, reminding me why this work mattered, why all of it did. Weeks passed. My second book launched, Not the Favorite, Still Worthy. The title itself sparked conversations across platforms. It became a talking point on podcasts, in classrooms, even among therapists. In the opening pages, I wrote, "Love is not about choosing one over another. It's about making space for all of us." Readers sent letters. Some said it healed something old. Others said it gave them the courage to speak up. One person wrote, "You made me feel like I existed." Bookstores hosted signings. College campuses invited me to speak. I smiled, signed copies, posed for photos. But I didn't chase any of it. The attention was welcome, but no longer necessary. I had already found what I needed. One evening, while scrolling through social media, a post stopped me mid-swipe. It was Ella. She stood in a cap and gown, sunlight framing her face. Her eyes were brighter than I remembered. Not because she was happier, but because she was more herself. The caption read, "For my sister, who made me brave." I blinked. My chest tightened. Not with pain, but something that felt like peace. I didn't comment, didn't repost. I just sat with it. A few days later, she visited the studio again. No lemon tarts this time, just a quiet knock and a small smile. We sat at the table drinking tea without sugar. "I'm scared to start over," she admitted. "I was too," I said. "Still am some days." She looked down at her cup. "You don't hate me?" "I never did." She nodded slowly. "Good." We didn't need to say much after that. The next morning, I walked to the studio early. The city was still stretching, blinking sleep from its eyes. I unlocked the door, turned on the lights, and sat at my desk. There I opened my journal and wrote a single sentence. "You are allowed to be whole. Not perfect, not healed beyond recognition, just whole. In all the fractured, tender, evolving ways that wholeness can look like." I closed the journal, stood up and faced the blank whiteboard ready for the day's workshop. Behind me, the kettle started to hum. Outside, the sky didn't promise anything. But inside me, there was quiet. And for the first time, it felt like home.